hello, hello. Dr. Carrie Hepburn here from Compass PD. I'm really excited about our podcast today because I am being joined by my colleague, Dr. Bridgett Neidringhaus. Hello, Bridget.
Hi, Carrie. How are you?
Good, I'm good. It's beautiful in the Midwest. The fall colors have come in. It's cold at night, and when you wake up in the morning, you just kind of want to stay snuggled up in your covers. And so that's been pretty fun. I love fall. How about you?
Me, me too. I love being able to open up the windows and let some
Mm,
fresh air in.
I agree. It feels like the house is clean just by opening the windows.
Right.
So, do you have anything fun happening in your world right now?
I'm actually getting ready to take a little trip to be with some family. That'll be a lot of fun. We're going to spend about 3 or 4 days together, and it's people from different parts of the country that are coming together for a little celebration. I love that because it gives me time to have face to face time with people that I don't get to see that often. So I'm really excited.
Hey,
Absolutely.
that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Um, well, those of you that are listening, Dr. Niedringhaus is here today to talk to you, principals. And those of you who are aspiring principals, the podcast is aimed to give you some ideas about around that November-ish, December-ish time frame. So we all know there's a lot happening. Something that we're going to do is start linking episodes inside our show notes. So you'll be able to see other episodes from Dr. Niedringhaus that will be kind of leading you up to this point, and that could be really nice pairings with what she's going to be talking about today. So here we are getting ready for all the things that are happening when it comes to holidays. Let's think about being a principal and administrator. What should be on their radars right now?
So there's a couple of things that really should be on your radar right now. The first thing I'm going to talk about isn't really holiday related. It's something that should be ongoing, but let's talk about monitoring. Right now, there are several areas that as principals we're really going to be monitoring. So we want to talk about our school improvement plans. We are in that November, December timeframe. We're getting close to like the end of a semester. So we should have been monitoring and continue monitoring things like attendance. How's attendance going with the students in your building? Are there specific areas that you could put in some strategies to help increase attendance, like making some personal phone calls, or for some of your students that really maybe need that extra step? Are you doing home visits, or do you have counseling staff that can help make contact with students? Are there ways that we can make sure that they're getting to school or getting to their bus or whatever? How are we getting kids to school, and how can we help? We're looking at our achievement data. We're always looking at our achievement data, it seems like, but we're really going
Mhm.
to start monitoring maybe some specific strategies that we put into place to help boost student achievement. And so some of the things that you could be looking at during this time are teacher instruction. You can be looking at, within instruction, what's the fidelity with which teachers are instructing, following the curriculum, making sure they're linked to the standards, all those kinds of things. We can also really be monitoring how our interventions are going. Are our intervention strategies that we have in place working? If not, we need to come up with a new plan to move forward instead of just continuing to do the same thing. I love to say Einstein's definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results, making sure that as leaders, if things aren't moving, we're not doing the same things over and over again, or talking louder or slower to
Right,
make these things happen.
right.
Because what we really need to do is look at what is the practice and how do we need to change the practice. Another thing that as administrators, we really want to keep an eye on at this time is that climate. What's the school climate like? How are teachers feeling right now? As we're moving into November and December, they've got a good amount of time behind them. and they know what's coming up in these November and December months. How do we make sure that we are supporting learning and supporting our students and supporting our teachers? How are we supporting our support staff?
Mhm.
And then what are you doing if you have other administrators in your building? How are you supporting them? To me, that's just some of the things that we should be looking at in that school improvement world. We also need to think about just one big statement. How am I checking in? Not just that we need to be doing these things, but the how. How are we checking in? Are we attending PLC meetings or collaborative team meetings and being a part of those as the administrator? How are we checking in with our support staff? You need to make sure you have something in place to check in with your support staff, like your office staff. How are they doing? Your paraprofessionals, how are they doing? Like, let's talk about some good ways, whether you do just like a lunch bunch, some way that you can try and check in with them. And
Mhm.
then again, how are you checking in on your students? Are you visible to them? Are you in the cafeteria when they're there? But we need to think past the what and think how. How are we checking in and monitoring all these areas? So
Mhm.
that's what I think is the big thing on the radar right now, is all these check-ins, because we're getting ready to head into a really hectic time. Although I'm not sure, is there a time in education we feel like it's not hectic? Is there a point in the year that we say, oh, it's not that bad? I don't
Right.
think so, but
No, no. It does feel like it hits a whole different level of hectic around this time. It's almost like rivals the end of the school year kind of time frame. It feels like because of all the additional activities that get on the calendar. I do have a question, and this is really interesting to me because we support a lot of smaller districts. It's not unusual. We support urban districts, we support suburban districts, but we also support a lot of rural kind of districts or small districts. And something that we're seeing a trend right now is not having school improvement plans. And for an administrator who desires to have something like this system in place, because it is a system that you're kind of setting up, what might be some things that they would do to have a school improvement plan or that might be in a school improvement plan?
So you think of the school improvement plan kind of like your roadmap. And so you want to think about, when I'm planning a trip, what's my final destination? I need to know where I'm going, right? Well, the school improvement plan kind of helps you with that. And it's not a final destination like I'm stopping and living here forever. It's like, here's where I want to go now. I'm taking a trip. Here's where I want to go right now. Setting some really achievable goals that we can get to. In our trip, we've got little stops along the way. When I think about school improvement, I think about what areas are there that we're going to need to measure. And so I mentioned attendance. I think attendance is something that people can really wrap their brains around, because there's really some concrete evidence about attendance. So most schools and school districts are measuring things like total days, days missed, tardy, things like that. And we have those numbers, and we can put some strategies in place to help improve things like attendance. And so it's a little more concrete area of the school improvement plan. And it's actually a great place to start, because I think it's something that most of us have a good understanding of. And
Mm.
we know that attendance is linked to achievement. And we all know that achievement is really that bar that we're kind of trying to link everything to. Attendance is a great place to start just talking, because we know that if we have increased attendance, that means we have students in seats in front of teachers that are instructing. Those are good things.
Right.
So then when
Yes.
we move into the achievement portion of a school improvement plan, We really want to do things like determine our current reality. Before I take my trip, I'm going to have to put into the GPS, well, where am I now if this is where I want to go? And so if I'm already halfway there, I might only have to spend 4 hours on a trip. But if I'm further away, I'm going to have to spend more time, and I might have to put in a few more stops along the way to make sure that I'm on the right track. Achievement's very much the same way. So we know, like, where do we want to be, but we need to first know, where are we right now? And so we have to take stock of, where are we at in the area of achievement? When we're looking at what that end goal is, where are we at in terms of that end goal? For example, Carrie, if I currently have 40% of my second graders are reading on level, and really we want 80% or more to be reading on level, we have to be practical about this. We're not
Right.
going to make a 40% gain in achievement in a year. I mean, if we are, please call me and let me know what you did, because I've never found that that works. But
Right.
what we want to do is start really honing in on some specific strategies. And so we talk about a term, SMART goals. When we're setting those goals, we want to be real specific. What is it that we're going to be working on, and how are we going to measure that? That's that M. And then we
Mhm.
want to think about, are these attainable? Like I said earlier, I can't go from 40 to 80%, but you know what? In a quarter or in a semester, I may be able to go from 40 to like 45% or 44%. Making sure I'm setting those attainable goals along the way to help me make progress towards my goal. We're going to be monitoring that by looking at some results. We're going to be looking at informal assessments, or those formative assessments that we do along the way, to help us know how we're reaching our goal. And we need to decide, and in what time frame are we looking at? If I have a building where my second grade needs to go from 4 to 80%, I would rather see them in third grade, not 4 to 80, I'm sorry, 40 to 80. I'd rather see
Yes.
in third grade that, oh, we're now at 50% and I want to get to 80%. And so we
Right.
made a 10% increase. I have less as I'm trying to reach that goal. Still working on that. And I'm
Mhm.
changing things as I need to. I'm monitoring things as I need to. Part of that achievement part of the school improvement plan really involves what's your current reality, your goal, your current reality, your steps that you're going to take along the way, and how you're going to monitor and measure those steps to make sure you're working towards your goal.
Thank you for that. I know I took us on a slight detour thinking about our roadmap, what we typically do, but I do believe that we have more new leaders in principal positions and leadership positions in districts that are really doing the very best with what they have, and any extra support that they can get, I know they find it to be really valuable and helpful. And you're such an expert at this work that I wanted to make sure that for those who don't have something like a school improvement plan, they would have an idea of where they could get started. So that's a great place to get started. Thinking attendance, one big rock. If we can get kids in schools, we know they're going to be learning. If they're not in schools, they aren't learning. And
Right.
then if we start thinking from there, next being achievement, and you can start building a school improvement plan. I think something that you did really well. Those of you that have been listening to us for a while know that I was blessed to have Dr. Neidringhaus as my principal. She never did this work in isolation. And so that's not something that a principal ever has to do independently. And she tells you month after month to like find your people, build your capacity, and something that you can do is start your school improvement plan with your leadership, and starting with attendance and then moving into achievement could be one way to get this work started. Now, let's talk about predictable problems that administrators will be facing around this time of year.
Some predictable problems. I just think about the scheduling of this time of the year. When we talk about scheduling, we think about all the activities and things that tend to come with this time of year. We want to make sure that we're intentional about the things that can really help us move. When I say help us move in our school improvement efforts, when we talk about school improvement planning, what are some things that we can be doing that are going to help us? Be intentional about scheduling things like learning walks. You don't want to stop. You want to maximize your time in classrooms. And by this point in the year, my hope is that you've already normalized that you have been a visible leader. You're in classrooms doing learning walk. A learning walk, it's not evaluative at all. It's simply for, I'm going to look for some things. I could go off on this whole tangent about learning walks and the power of a learning walk. And I can tell you confidently, I did learning walks, even if I wasn't calling them learning walks. You can walk the hallways and read the work that students are doing and learn so much about what's going on in that classroom. You can pop in and just walk around and watch and see what the kids are doing and what they're engaged in. I loved to just be in and mix around with the kids. And sometimes I had a very intentional purpose. And other times I walked out of there and it was like, wow, I didn't know what I didn't know. It was such a great opportunity for me to be that instructional leader as a learning leader, because we have to understand that connection that as instructional leaders, it doesn't mean we know everything, because there's no way that we could, but what I could do is get in the classrooms and see what was going on. And that was a great opportunity for me to learn and then follow up with some conversation and let teachers know, like, I see what you're doing and talk to me about that. Tell me more about that. I need to understand and learn more. It's funny when you do something like that, it breaks down so many barriers. Teachers are no longer on defense about you coming in and out of their classroom when they really understand the purpose of you being there is not to put you on the spot as a teacher, but to learn from you, to understand, to see it in practice, what we've maybe been learning about together. It's so powerful. You're going to be doing your evaluations. So making sure that you're scheduling time to get your evaluations in. I think last month I talked a lot about, doing some of that, building that internal leadership capacity so that you can block some times out for yourself to get into classrooms. Things always get pushed to the side. And I understand that emergencies happen, things come up, but making sure that in scheduling, you're really blocking your time to do some of the learning walks, the evaluations, things like that. So if you missed last month, go back and listen to that. I gave some good tips about things you can do and ways you can build that internal leadership capacity as a principal so that you can do some of those things uninterrupted. When we talk about scheduling and we're talking about November and December, we can't not talk about all the things, holidays that are getting ready to come up. I think back to when I was a principal, we started putting together in October. We liked to call it the season of giving. In hindsight, it was a lot. We were trying to do it with good intentions. Our team was trying to come up with a way to communicate with our families about all the things going on. But it started in October and went through December. And that's a long time. That's a lot of instructional time when we were doing other things. And other things aren't bad, but that's a lot of instructional time that we were spending on other things. We put out a schedule, a calendar, hoping that parents could see, here are some ways that your child can participate in different things we have going on. But when you look at it in hindsight, that was a lot of instructional time that maybe we were taking for other things that were coming up. One of the things that I'm going to talk about in a very loving manner is the Thanksgiving feast. I'm a big fan of a Thanksgiving feast. I actually happen to be married to a trained chef. And so Thanksgiving is always held at our house. It's a wonderful time. I can't tell you enough about it. However, let's talk about the Thanksgiving feast in a school setting. As a principal new to a building, I inherited not just the Thanksgiving feast, but the whole brouhaha that went with the Thanksgiving feast. Intentions were pure. Nobody set out to do anything harmful, but we kind of shut down to really do all things feast or feast related. We did naming ceremonies. Parents were highly involved. There was food coming in and out, crafts coming in and out. I mean to tell you, we could have had a wonderful street festival just around the Thanksgiving feast, and it was one grade level. It wasn't the whole school, but one grade level really took it over the top. They were able to tie some academics to what they did in this. I mean, it was really like a month-long kind of thing. It got to be that all of a sudden, this feast where we're letting kids sample foods and they're crafting and they're storytelling and they're writing and they're doing all these great, wonderful things, right? It turned into, I don't have enough outlets for my crock pots. Let's blow a fuse. In the second grade, come in. Oh, every parent, like, where are we putting all these people? Like, we have room for our kids. That turned into, you need to do something about the parking. Really? I think we're doing okay. Our school can really handle our staff. And I thought we were doing okay. And then it was, well, they ate my corn and not this corn, and they didn't want the turkey, so I brought fish, or all these other things. It got bigger than the holiday itself. And the other thing we have to remember is we are the melting pot of the world in the United States, and we weren't being very inclusive. We had students who weren't able to participate in this feasting activity.
Yeah.
And we had people that we maybe set off or really kind of offended over this. I want to say my word about predictable problems that we need to keep in mind is empathy. As the leader, it was my job to make sure I understood from different perspectives why we were doing what we were doing. Remembering that we're looking at the feelings or emotions of others. We're not connecting to an experience. So the feast was an experience. Me having empathy about the feast, empathy is not about the feast. Okay. Empathy is about the feelings that went with the feast. We had a lot of different feelings. We had some people that honestly on the grade level were feeling really overwhelmed. And maybe we're doing this activity because it had always been done. And so they came in and they kind of inherited it just like I did. We had feelings of isolation. We had students that could not participate in the feast. It's my job as a leader to look at that point of view and say, what are we doing that we can make sure that we're including everyone and that no one feels slighted or left out, because this is really our educational time. And then I had teachers that I needed to understand their point of view, because this was a tradition that had gone on for years. Was I going to be the person that did away with the feast? Because if I was, I really needed to be ready to stand and make sure that everybody understood my reasoning. What ended up happening is the feast kind of started dwindling a little bit as we put some more procedures in place, as we made sure that we had some clear content focus on how that actually attached to our curriculum and our standards. As we continued to make sure that we were still reaching out towards our achievement goals, as we made sure that we were an all-inclusive school and that nobody felt left out, no matter your ability or your background or anything, that everybody felt like they were a part. When I think about scheduling, I think about those holidays, and you're going to have your concerts coming up. And you're going to have, I was an assistant principal in a school where we did Santa's workshop during school. We did school-wide sing-alongs. We did Christmas movie days. Those were fun and great, but those were days worth of missed instruction. What are we doing to make sure that we're scheduling in opportunities for students to continue their learning during these times.
Okay, so I'm laughing because for those of you that are listening, if you can't see me, I was on that team for the Thanksgiving feast. I was a fan of the Thanksgiving feast. And when I do things, I like to do them very big. If you haven't learned that about me yet, like everything's over the top. I think what was really beneficial for me was as a teacher, we have things that we just love. And I love experiences for people and I loved experiences for students. But I also love more that kids can read, write, do math. And that particular event was based on one social studies standard. And then we tied in anything else we could, reading, writing, everything. And it really became more of a thematic experience, not really an instructional experience. And Bridgett was what I would call, I don't know if I want to say a warm demander in that, but she was brave enough to ask the questions that needed to be asked so that we had to really think and reflect about what is the purpose of this and are we really meeting that purpose? And the answer was in its entirety, no. Maybe parts of it were purposeful and aligned with standards and achievement. But in the end, the overall experience, when you're talking like weeks of instruction being missed and focusing on one standard alone, and to be honest, it probably wasn't even culturally relevant, or we were probably doing more appropriation than being historically accurate. When we had those conversations and made those decisions, in the end, it really did make sense and was wise and the right thing to do. But it is hard as a leader to be able to have those conversations. And Bridgett was able to do that in a way that wasn't threatening and in a way that she wasn't taking away our only child, that some of those conversations can feel like. That's a very predictable problem. And this story is a very real, true story that I was part of that. Thankfully,
Well, and
I learned.
and when you talk about experiences, I bet kids remember that experience. I have no doubt that kids remember, oh, remember in second grade when we did this.
Yeah.
But I like something that you said is that we spend, whether it's the Thanksgiving feast or it's Christmas around the world, or it's, it can be a lot of different
Yeah.
things. We spend so much time and effort to prepare for these things that they're not relevant for the students at that time. And when I say relevant at that time, I mean, it's not part of the curriculum for that time. It's not, in first grade, if we're doing, Christmas around the world, are we studying world cultures in first grade? Probably not. We're probably closer to studying more about our community and our city and things like that at that point. I think we have to keep those kinds of things in mind. And I can't stress enough, as the principal, there were times that handfuls of kids would come to the office because it was party time and they couldn't participate.
Right.
That breaks your heart.
It
What are you
does.
going to have them sit in the office? How do we do these? How, and so it broke my heart for a lot of reasons. I knew that other kids would be talking about what they got to do. I started feeling this urge to make sure that I was at least trying to find something for them to do that would be equally fun or meet their needs. And yet I'm thinking to myself, but this is isolating them. It was isolating students. And so I was much happier when we were able to find ways to celebrate or to do things where we're enjoying each other that everyone could be a part of.
And I think would I rather have the experience of a Thanksgiving feast or kids have the experience of feeling included, learning, and being part of a learning community and be able to talk about the experience as a whole in second grade or third grade or their freshman year than just that experience. So taking that passion and rechanneling that so that all kids had that same experience, but not just one day that sort of
Right.
ran into 2 weeks. Thank you for sharing that because I think it's very relevant And I do believe it's something, these things are still happening. We're kind of starting to wrap this up. What are some tips or reminders you would like to share with administrators right now?
I have two tips I want to talk about. Number one, how can you increase your visibility? That's so important at this time of year. Increase your visibility as a principal. I read an article about increasing visibility in schools, and it showed a principal who got like a standing podium kind of desk on wheels and would move it into the hallways during passing times or, whatever. And I thought, that's an easy, like little something to increase visibility. However, I also want to say, I hope that principal then was engaging, because it's not about just students seeing you. It's about
Mm-hmm.
your engaging with them. It's not just about the teachers seeing you. It's about how are you engaging with them. And so
Mm-hmm.
keeping that in mind, making your learning walks a priority, or just normalizing that as part of your daily, weekly practice. And so it's not maybe that you're going into the same couple classrooms all the time. It may take you a while to get through the building, depending on your size, but make it so that your staff isn't coming into the lounge saying, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so was in my class today. Can you believe it? Like,
Right.
don't make it so it's a shock to them, or that they're concerned, or did they come to your room? Did they make it normalized? Make it so that, oh yeah, he did come in. He did pop in for a minute, or she did pop in for a little bit and talked to a student, and, make that part of that visibility plan.
Right.
And then think about some simple things that you can be doing right now. I want you to think about, as a principal, what are ways that through this visibility you can support teachers? I walk the halls, or I'm bouncing in and out of classrooms. And I might say to the teacher, like, need a break for a minute, or,
Mm-hmm.
can I get you something? Would you like to go down to the lounge and get some coffee? Or, if you know that something's going on in the family, hey, do you need to step out and make a phone call? I'm happy to cover this for a while for you. As a principal, I liked to cover classrooms. I couldn't do it all the time, of course, but it was kind
Right.
of a fun experience,
Yeah.
because then it kind of threw me back in the middle of things. And talking
Mm-hmm.
about your increased visibility with both your staff and with your students, you're coming in, and guess what? I am going to do my best to follow the plans that were going on in the classroom at that time. But I could also take that opportunity to kind of just segue into some good opportunity for some feedback from students about some things that are going on in our school or in our community. And so I think that increased visibility, especially during this time, because it
Mm-hmm.
tends to be so hectic, it helps everybody feel like, okay, I can calm
Mm-hmm.
down.
Mm-hmm.
Things are going to be okay. We're normalized here right now. Things are still moving forward. It's not
Right.
everybody getting all worked up. The other thing, Carrie, that I think is really important for our leaders to be doing right now is to model and encourage wellness. Thinking about, what does that look like? When you think about your own wellness journey, for myself, I liked to carry a bottle of water with me every day. And that was
Yeah.
part of my wellness journey, because I wasn't always going to be near the office if I made sure that I had that with me. Letting them know that you do take some time to eat a lunch, or thinking about, I'm reading this book right now, has nothing to do with education. That's okay. That's good. It helps round you out to be the person that people want to serve under, or that they look to for leadership,
Mm-hmm.
because then they know, like, there's this whole other person there besides who I see just as a leader in my school. And it's
Yeah.
so important to share your journey. Leaders, be vulnerable, share your wellness journey. When things are going well, or when things aren't going well, reach out, talk to some of your teachers, see what they're doing, see what are some things that are going on that you might change in your practice.
Mm-hmm.
I am a walker. I love to walk. But I know some things I should be doing in my wellness journey at this point in my life that I'm not. The walking is exercise for me, but it's actually the best mental break that I take all day. And it is truly me time. I
Yep.
might turn on music, or I might not. I
Yeah.
might just walk and enjoy the beauty that's out there. You know, we talked about the beautiful fall right now. And so
Yeah.
for me, I do that twice a day. I do that first thing in the morning,
Oh.
and then I do it again in the evening. And I do take my dog, so it serves another purpose. But what a calming effect it has on me as a leader to
Mhm.
just reset. And so whether it's reset in the morning to get ready for the day or
Mhm.
reset in the evening to just kind of decompress a little bit, we all have to be really active in our own wellness journeys. And so I think that's a great thing to share with your staff.
I love this. This episode, I'm just blown away by how much ground we've covered in such a short period of time. So we've talked about school improvement plans, and you gave just a little quick tutorial, checking in on students, on staff, on different with different stakeholders within your community was something that you're like, you need to have this on your radar. What does that look like? And then as we started moving into those predictable problems, talking about scheduling, because that is a beast this time of year. October, November, December. October's pretty good until toward the end of the month. And then it feels like it just, you kind of start to lose it from there. Those predictable routines in a school day and in a week. Then we moved into, you were talking really about us thinking about empathy and the types of activities that are happening in our schools, and making wise decisions with empathy leading that way when we think about those activities around this time of year. And then moving into some tips and reminders for our administrators being, think about your visibility, making sure you have increased visibility that's going to serve multiple purposes. Anywhere from learning walks to class visits. There's a lot of mileage that comes out of that time that you're spending in the hallways and in the classrooms. And finally, taking care of yourself. You know, when you're on the airplane and they tell you to put the oxygen mask on first before you can help anyone else, your children included, it is important as a leader to take care of your health, your physical, emotional, mental well being. You have to do that, because if you don't do that, you
Mhm.
can't serve the people you're trying to serve well.
Right.
Just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Neidringhaus. This was great. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And to everyone, we would love for you to share our podcast with others. And I want you to know that Dr. Neidringhaus does this work with principals and with leaders in school districts all the time. So reach out to us. We would love to have her come help you get some of these systems and structures in place. Have a great day.